primary election results are in, and voters made one thing clear. They're choosing change.
Oh, yeah. Democratic Socialists pulling off a series of upsets, sending a strong message to establishment Democrats. Political strategist Trip Yang joining us this morning with more insight on the results. Trip, good to see you this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And we keep saying the big winner of the night was Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who endorsed three candidates. I want to talk first about New York 13 and the race with Daria Liza Avila Chevalier and how she defeated an incumbent here, Adriano Espaillat. This was somebody who came out of obscurity pretty much, selected by the mayor and endorsed by the mayor. What does this mean? So
this was certainly the biggest surprise from last night. She was a relative unknown. Now, she was recruited by some lefty organizations like the DSA, like the Justice Democrats, but most of us who work professionally in New York politics had not heard of her until recently. He endorsed her about a month ago, and look, she went from relative obscurity to the next Congress member for Northern Manhattan and the Bronx. It is largely due to Mayor Mandani being this popular.
Right, and emphasizing Chevalier's win, once again, first-time candidate, Congressman Espaillat really needed to pull out all the stops along this campaign trail, and he still wasn't able to do it. So what do you make of the voters kind of rebuking him in this way?
So this was the biggest surprise of the night. In some of these other races, Mamdani's endorsement was as good as gold, as expected. He really carried Claire Valdez over in Brooklyn and Queens to a large, decisive win, but he had vocally backed someone like Claire Valdez and others for many months. Daria Liza here in New York 13, this is a relatively recent endorsement of his. Adriano Espaillat had almost everybody, the elected officials, the labor unions, the organizations, millions of dollars in outside spending, the congressional leadership. But you know what? Zohran Mamdani right now in New York is about as popular as the Pope and Jalen Brunson. And that says something right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, nobody was paying attention to New York 13 because they thought it was relatively a called race a month ago until Mamdani endorsed Chevalier and everything changed. Let's talk about right now Brad Lander as well. That was another big race of the night, defeating another incumbent in Dan Goldman. And the big topic here really, I think, that differed the two of them was Israel.
Yeah, you know, this was a race where actually you essentially had two incumbents. New York 10 was very different from New York 7 and 13. Those races, you had young, fairly unknown socialist candidates taking on much of the Democratic Party. Here you had Goldman and Lander, two candidates who were fairly established. Lander was very well established on the Brooklyn side of it, and two candidates with track records. I will say, professionally, our firm, we had been a strategist on the Goldman campaign. I do think Dan Goldman has a good record holding ICE accountable, holding the Trump administration accountable in this regard. But in this case, Brad Lander had a personal track record, a reputation. He had a lot of goodwill and good vibes coming off the mayoral race last year, where he cross-endorsed with candidate Mandani.
This wasn't a small win. He won by almost half, 30,000 plus votes over Dan Goldman. I mean, it was a big defeat for Goldman.
Yeah, look, I would say PIX11, your poll, look, PIX11 has some of the best polls in the business, and this shows it. It was fairly accurate to your poll.
Right. So, Trip, then we have State Assemblywoman Claire Valdez beating out Antonio Reynoso. That was in the 7th District to replace Congresswoman Velasquez, who endorsed Reynoso. Was that the Mamdani effect once again?
That was 100% the Mamdani effect. This is Zohran saying, there were very few people who were with him who publicly stood by him in October 2024. Very early on, the first month that he launched his long shot mayoral campaign, he was polling somewhere between 0 and 1%, probably closer to 0%. And the DSA was his first big organization. Claire Valdez was the only elected official on day one to endorse Mandani for mayor. He is saying, I got my people's backs. He carried her. The only surprise here is that the margin was so big, because Reynoso, in any other race, he would have been the progressive candidate. The working families endorsed him, almost every union, all these elected officials, Tish James, etc. They all endorsed Reynoso, but the margin was what it was, because in this district especially, where many of us in the industry, we call it the Commie Corridor because of how young it is. We're talking Bushwick, Williamsburg, Astoria, Greenpoint, Mamdani. This was his best district from a mayoral race last year. He is very popular here, and it clearly carried over to Claire Valdez.
And that Commie Corridor is what showed up to vote last night. I want to talk about what this means for the Democratic Party overall, right? You had Hakeem Jeffries come out last night and said that the party is not going to shift. But you have three DSA members. I mean, Brad Lander says he's not, but he's super progressive. What does this mean for kind of the future of the Democratic Party heading into midterms?
Well, New York is often a bellwether for national politics simply because so much of the energy, the media attention, it is centered here in New York. And New York State, by the way, Long Island, Hudson Valley, typically has a lot of swing congressional races that decide the next Speaker of the House. So what this really means is right now, Mandani, his honeymoon period got extended. The Democratic leadership and the mayor, they simply have to find a way to work together. They've shown in different instances on the state level. Earlier this year, the governor and the mayor, they've partnered on many initiatives bringing about universal child care. Mandani had endorsed the governor's reelection this year. The governor endorsed his election last year when he was going up against Andrew Cuomo, the general. So the relationship between Mandani and the governor, it is a good blueprint for how congressional Democratic leaders could approach the mayor and vice versa.
Right. So looking at the November election, Michael Lasher, he beat out Alex Boras in the race to replace Jerry Nadler. Do we think he's favored to win?
He's heavily favored because that part of Manhattan, the 12th congressional district, is as Democratic as you can get. Republicans in that part of Manhattan are functionally extinct as an organization. So Michael Lasher is very much carrying the torch for Jerry Nadler. Nadler is a liberal lion. Very well recognized, and Michael Lasher is very well poised to succeed that legacy.
Nassau County Executive and Republican candidate for Governor Bruce Blakeman had this to say about the results. Take a listen to it. Oh, this is what he had to say. Okay, the Hochul Mamdani lunatic win of the Democratic Party has made it less affordable and less safe to live in New York. I'm asking common sense Democrats to join our cause to save New York from the socialist, anti-American communists. The president also put out a statement last night that was very anti-DSA. What do you make of that statement?
So what I'll say respectfully here, and look, I'm a lifelong Democrat, so I come at it from a certain perspective. Yeah. Donald Trump's approval ratings are very negative in New York, and Bruce Blakeman, while he has been successful in Nassau County, he has tried running for higher office many times and has been unsuccessful. His reputation is tied to Donald Trump, very unpopular. There are 2 times as many registered Democrats than Republicans. Look, all I'm saying is the chance of Bruce Blakeman being Kathy Hochul this year is like the New York Jets winning the Super Bowl.
Good analogy.
Yes. So with this sweep of Democratic Socialists, do you think this will ignite the Republican base to really come forward in November?
And say, look what's happening in New York. You don't want this.
This is a really good question. There's a couple ways to look at it. When I look at polls professionally, when you look at the National Democratic Party, the most popular figures, past and present, are figures like Barack Obama, Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Mandani. Now, some of these folks are Democratic Socialists, some of them are not, right? So it really depends right now. Mandani's national numbers are very high, which suggests that he is not going to be this boogeyman for national Republicans come November. Yeah. However, in some places in New York State, in Nassau County, Mandani's numbers are not great. It has been a boogeyman for local Nassau County and Suffolk County Republicans to hit the local Democratic candidates. So the answer is a bit of a mixed bag.
Got to leave it there. Trip Yang, appreciate you coming in this morning to break it all down for us.
Thank you.
And now that the primaries have happened, everybody, we are looking ahead to the November elections. Keep it tuned right here on PIX11 and PIX11 Plus as we cover the lead up, of course, to November, when we'll see who will officially take those seats in Washington, although it's very likely that these names will be the ones. You can see the full breakdown on the election results, by the way, on PIX11.com. Yeah,